we're in. It's official. So I'll post the link to the doc if anyone has anything they want to talk about. They can put it in there. The doc's in the calendar invite. Add yourself to the attendance. I'll take some notes on anything. But thanks everyone for coming today, and we're at the end of March. We're doing it. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about? I think we can just dive right into something if someone has anything they want to share.
Antelope version 4 release candidate. Is it ready for putting on a network somewhere? Are we confident?
It's an RC2, so run it internally.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
You can run it on testnet. We've been running it on StageNet for about 3 weeks.
Yeah,
and it's working well. I haven't had any major issues with it. Performance is a little bit better.
I looked at it briefly. How is it figuring out adjacent peers? What is the mechanism for the addresses being propagated into the network?
Besides the peers in
Hey,
your
Jenna,
config file,
is there a chance you could give me edit access to the document? I can view it, but
there's a new feature on 4.0 that allows it to auto discover and properly like optimize the peering with peers. I don't know how it works, but
yeah, I couldn't tell by the docs either, and I hadn't pulled up in the code. I didn't know if anybody else had.
I have to imagine the peers also have to be running 4.0 so that they have whatever extra peer-to-peer, data to do that.
Yeah, because that's great, because apparently it's going to look at proposed schedules and figure out who it needs to peer with in order to make sure that peering is appropriate for the BP in front and behind them in the schedule. So that's a great add.
Yeah, even without messing with those settings, just purely upgrading, it's demonstrated improvement in speed and network optimization. So
fantastic.
Anybody that has some beefier machines that they can run on testnet for the next week or so would be much appreciated. We're going to try to break our transaction record.
How beefy? Is there too beefy, or just throw everything at it?
Well, it's
throw
not
everything
just
at it.
Yeah, it's not just beefy. It's on StageNet we have to run overclock, and there's a bunch of dial, but
we're not gonna do those on testnet though.
Right. So I think on testnet all we would be okay doing is that you have to increase the max CPU execution time from 30 milliseconds to 500 or more, and then turn overclock on. I mean, I think that's a reasonable one.
Well, I was thinking, at Good Block we have the super fast nodes, and I think we have two. But for this period, we could point our mainnet one to testnet, or we could see if our other one's in use. But that would be. But I know there's been concern in the past about that being too fast and causing problems.
Well,
maybe Nathaniel, you can check in with the guys.
I'm running you could also just put a second node, a testnet BP on whatever hardware you have. I mean, I'm running 2 on 1. They'll fit.
I could repurpose that vStore gateway that we're planning on using for the testnet. We could absolutely do that.
Now you can just crank up Node OS again on your mainnet server on a different set of ports.
Oh,
Yep, you can do that too.
okay, that's easy. Do you
That
have a
would
period of
probably be
time
the
that we
easiest.
can expect to do it for? Obviously, that's not a long-term thing we'd want to do.
About a week. Well, I'd say maybe 3 days.
Okay. Can we get some kind of consensus within this group so that's a practice I normally wouldn't, support, but I understand under these conditions, but do we have general consensus that that's a reasonable thing to do? So we don't come back and go, hey, you're running two things on one machine.
Not from my point of view. There's no way I'll be doing that. I mean, I can understand the rationale behind it, but for point of view of having responsibility over my infrastructure, no.
Yeah, I understand and support that. But I also support people who are willing to make those adjustments for a limited period. That's my
Yeah.
What's the concern, Ryan?
Well, just that mainnet BP is a secure, isolated bare metal node, and I don't want to install any kind of testnet stuff alongside, just from processes potentially getting frost over, network bottlenecks happening. There's just so many extra things that can go wrong if you create that kind of configuration.
Okay.
That might be a problem for some networks, but for Good Block right now, we don't have that problem with the server.
I mean, I can understand like that, the server might be powerful enough to do it. It's just that from a point of view of just software interaction and keeping an isolated security context for the mainnet producer node, I can't see the point in doing it. It'd be much better to just spin up a like $100 server, $100 server for the month, and then just do a complete bare metal node on that rather than use the mainnet one.
I completely support anyone who has these concerns. Everybody knows their own equipment best, and in fact, it's on testnet. We're only going to need 21 block producers or 22 block producers, and we can cherry pick those based on speed metrics to max this out. So it doesn't. It's not something we would need everyone to do. That's my understanding. Jesse, does that, and JT, does that track with yours?
We actually need far less. On StageNet, what we've been doing is we have a producer that's set to 0 effort, meaning he doesn't produce blocks. And then I think we actually have, right now, currently, there's one that's just not producing on the StageNet, so it's missing around, and they're adjacent. So we have somebody missing around, and then we have a producer that doesn't produce blocks. So we've got 12 seconds, and then that's immediately followed, I think, by my BP. Which is cranked up. So we open the cannons during that missed round, and the mempool, if you want to call it that, fills up during the missed round and during the producer that doesn't produce any blocks. And then everything's just waiting there for the next producer that's fast. So really we only need like maybe 2 or 3. And then we also need some that are kind of choked out, and then we need to coordinate their order in the schedule so that we can follow that same pattern that we've been following.
Okay, so it sounds like, if I understand correctly, this is a very specialized test, and is it designed to get just the highest 2 block maximum, and then we call that our max TPS? Is that how it's spec'd, or are we trying to get something that's more of a sustained versus just a 1 second burst max?
No, we're trying not to plug testnet up with a bunch of needless traffic and stuff that we have to index forever. So that's why we're continuing to tune the process on StageNet and then come to testnet with exactly what we want.
Yep.
And the schedule that we want, so that we don't have to keep running this over and over again, because I mean, we're throwing somewhere in the vicinity of 300 to 400,000 transactions
Mhm.
at it per go. So it's a lot. It ends up being a lot. The blocks are really beefy, and the RPC takes a couple of minutes to chew through it all.
The intention is that we do a lot on StageNet with a lot of different settings and share that. And for instance, if we demonstrate on StageNet that we can do X number of transactions with the knob turned up to 10, where for context on mainnet and testnet it's turned to 4, because we have it set to 200 milliseconds of execution out of a 500 millisecond block. So the intention is that on StageNet we can prove that when we set it to 200, we do 0.4x, and we set it to 500, we do X, and we can talk about X, and we can share everything we have from StageNet that we hit X with it tuned up to 10, but we also will acknowledge that for posterity and leaving room for the potatoes to keep up, we have mainnet turned down to 4. But we want to demonstrate on testnet where it's set to 4 that we did 0.4x, so that we can extrapolate out, testnet did 0.4x, StageNet did 0.4x, but StageNet we turned up to 10 and we got X, which is a big number that potentially can be more what we lead with. Referencing the article that explains this is, with volume turned to 10, and we run turn to 4, and we still do better than everybody else at 4, or everybody else except us and other antelope networks.
Do you think it would be reasonable to aim for, once we get everything pinned down and we really know it, a testnet, a 2-minute run on testnet turned up to 10 or 9 or something, so that we could so that when people look, we can really point to a number? I understand all the concerns. What's that?
I'd be fine with that. I'd be curious what other people think. I could do that with, on mainnet that takes a multi-sig to change the global setting on testnet. I could just do that, but it wouldn't be a like for like test. We'd probably want to have both, right? We would want to say, here's 0.4 set exactly as mainnet, and here's 10, or here's 4 the way mainnet set, and here's 10, and here's 2 examples of consecutive blocks, from each.
Yeah. So we could, I like the methodology of starting with StageNet, and then when we feel we have that nailed down, do it on testnet. And with the reality being that even at that point, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries. And we could show we could prove out our theory on testnet, and then we could do a very short application, 20 seconds on mainnet, and just to further prove it out. But what I do like going for something I would advocate going for a sustained rate. So you're recording both burst and sustained rate, and not just focusing on burst, because that's misleading. And and everyone, even though everyone does it, it's not realistic. I think we should lead by providing more industry standard type throughput reporting.
Yeah, sustained over, well, two things. One, sustained over how long, and then 2, the mainnet idea. It's not. It's gonna. We have to churn through a lot of Telos. Let's just say that. There's, each cannon is generating 1,000 EVM addresses, loading them up with Telos, transferring, swapping,
And
40 transactions
ton of RAM.
address. So 4,000, 4,000 swaps per cannon. We're each running like a few to get these numbers, and that's, a small amount of Telos for each swap plus gas. It adds up, and it's gone. It's at the end of this, it's all orphaned in these accounts that have dust left. And right now, because it's funny money, there's no it doesn't try to recoup it, right? So if you run the cannon and it fails, you've just sent, a couple thousand Telos out to these 1,000 addresses. And then the next time you run it, it sends more. It doesn't check, oh, you already have enough to do this. It just sends enough, right?
We can't send.
So we'd be looking at thousands and thousands of Telos just kind of going poof to have it on mainnet.
We can't send it and then send it back.
Well, it gets swapped for another asset, and it gets burned in gas. There's potentially some that could get sent back, but right now the code, assumes it's funny money and doesn't do a check. I mean, the cannon when you first start it has to do, for 1,000 addresses, it has to do a ton of work to just set up those 1,000 addresses.
Right.
And it doesn't check their balance to see if it just needs to top it up. And then at the end, it doesn't go back and say, is there any left over? Let me bring it back. So
Sure. I'd suggest that what we do then, and probably what you're suggesting already, maximize it on StageNet, figure out what we're doing with a goal towards getting to a real short but meaningful amount of time on testnet, and then and testing that out. And then once we've gone through that experiment, we can use any learnings about how to minimize the cost and what the numbers we're trying to prove are and what the minimum amount of time required to prove that would be. So like we can talk about that. It'd be great if we could talk about that for real next month, right? I think it'd be great to be there, but yeah, we'll definitely support getting this on StageNet. StageNet. Can you tell me why? I had one question about StageNet. You said that there's one that's not doing anything and it builds up the mempool. That's intentional design, as I understand it, or was I missing something?
that's how we got the biggest number with our native testing, was just clogging it up. Because as soon as you start sending these transactions, they have to spread out and get propagated and everything. And the moment you start producing blocks, you start reducing that back pressure that you're actually trying to build up. So
Yeah.
that was deliberate in how we did it, last year for native. So that's just kind of left over how it is. And so we're just piggybacking on how that was. It's not necessarily needed. If you load up enough cannons, you can create the back pressure, even if they're actually actively being, executed while you're trying to send them in. You just have to send more
Right. We need adequate fast BP nodes. We need adequate fast cannons, and we need adequate fast RPC nodes as well. Right. So is that a bottleneck?
No, we're bypassing the RPC layer right now.
Okay. Well, then do we consider that a realistic test?
I mean,
It's what it's capable of. It's what the network's capable of doing. And it's what the contract's capable of supporting, regardless of the RPC layer. So I still feel like it's a legitimate test.
The response I'd give to anybody that would challenge that is the only thing that our mainnet is not capable of doing that our testnet and StageNet were capable of doing is getting that bogged down. Like, we're only doing this to degrade its ability to sustain execution.
Right. I guess the other way to look at it is that there's really no reason to build a huge and maintain a big RPC network on that greatly outpaces the utilization of the chain. Right. We can scale that up anytime. We'll scale that up and always stay ahead of usage. But there's no reason to build that up for this testing purposes. I think that's a reasonable response.
Yeah, the RPCs will scale horizontally.
Yep.
And the only true bottleneck is execution in a block on a producer node. And the other important thing to touch on there so far in what we've been doing, what we've observed is that it actually works better and we get better numbers the more cannons we have and the smaller things are.
Mhm.
It's just so, like, to give context, we have one cannon. Mine right now is one cannon with 1,000 addresses. Each address will generate 40 EVM transactions in one Telos transaction. So we're batching the EVM transactions in the Telos transactions. And then we have to spin up a thread to send these transactions to the chain. The smaller that batch size is, so going from 40 to 20, and the fewer transactions we send to the RPC at a time, the more you spread it out, the better it settles. So if you think about, I was saying yesterday, trying to fill a jar with sand versus pebbles, you're going to get more density with the sand. But we also then would have to have, 40,000 individual cannons basically sending one transaction each, which is a lot harder to do as a small group than having 4 cannons sending 10,000 transactions each, right? So but if you were to say, okay, but in a real world, if you had 40,000 transactions coming in, they'd be coming in from 40,000 users across 4 or 40 RPCs, right? So the closer we get to the real world traffic pattern, the better we observe it performs.
Now, would it help? So it sounds like it would help to have 20 cannons. Is that right? I mean, it seems reasonable we could get some extra computers set up for that short-term usage. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think what we've found is that, with just what we have, we're doing good enough. We spin up a few terminals, a few cannons, and we actually I'm happy with how we're doing, and it's easier to coordinate than last year when we did this. We had like 7 of us on a call, and people had to drop, and everybody had to coordinate when they're going to press the button. Kind of was a cluster. So for us right now, what we've seen on StageNet has been, I think, good enough. Just going from one person to one cannon to 4 or 5 cannons has helped the performance. Even just one cannon and splitting it up more has helped the performance. So
can cannons be VMs or do they have to be bare metal?
They can be VMs. They should be adjacent to an API. The API kind of also is a bottleneck. So, having 2 APIs with 2 cannons, for instance, is better than 1 API with 2 cannons. And then having the API be network close, but not on the same hardware as the producer. There's a bunch of factors.
I'm just thinking about that. One of the ways that might work would be if VPs who have the extra VM or whatever in the configuration that you're talking about, because most VPs are going to have their own API that's on different than their producer node. But like we have that system in our rack, we could, instead of having to configure it ourselves and then you have to coordinate with us, we could just give you a login for that, and you could set it up, and then when the experiment's done, we could wipe it and move on, and then you wouldn't have to coordinate a bunch of people. It would just be one person would be SSHing into a dozen servers. Would that help?
I think that the place where we would need the help would be getting a couple producers, like really powerful producers, like really getting that one producer who we're going to let take the back pressure that we build up. That would be the one thing. I think the cannons we have covered. At least the numbers we've seen so far within the cannons we control are working. They're kind of a pain in the ass to set up. Like it's not creating 1,000 addresses. There's some changes in the 4.0 that change how things are applied. It's been kind of just, once we get a cannon set up, we just kind of keep using that one, and we have enough at this point.
Okay,
but
I'm trying to understand the process.
Yeah. On testnet though, like if we had your, the AMD Epic or whatever it was that you had, like the Threadripper, whatever it is. Yeah. Like having that one, like right now, I think mine's an i9. So it's kind of fast, but I know there's faster.
Yeah, no, I mean so far as I can tell, it's the fastest one on any antelope chain. So yeah, we can, and we have two of them, so we can figure out how to get those configured for you guys. Well, and to be honest, they all have multiple threads, and you know, it's super fast and it doesn't break a sweat. So if you coordinate with Nathaniel, we can support this effort for sure.
Yeah, I think as far as help goes, I would say getting that on the test net and making sure people know that it's happening so that they don't panic if they see stuff. Also, we may I might turn off the rotation that votes every hour so it stops messing with the schedule. And then we might need to coordinate the producer location just so that we can order the schedule the way we want. That would be the only other thing besides getting it online and producing.
The only thing I'd ask, I guess, is if the TCD could have somebody, doesn't have to be you, could be, you know, Nate, or could be anybody, who sort of just puts out the communications about this, so we know what date and what hours it's going to happen, and so we stay ahead of that and keep that in the various BP channels, so we can just plan ahead. I think, you know, with a public schedule, I think that would be great and helpful.
Yeah, we can try to do that. I mean, I pushed some this morning already. Nobody noticed, but just trying to get it configured and actually working on testnet from StageNet. Had some settings to change, but before we do like any big ones, yeah, we can coordinate and let everybody know.
Yeah. Well, no one notices because there's not been any notice given, right? So it's a circular problem. So let's fix that, and then you'll get more participation.
Sounds good.
Just if someone could clarify for me, the plan is that once the process is worked out on StageNet, then powerful servers on testnet will run the same process, and then that's going to be used as a mainnet benchmark. We're going to use that to say, hey, you know, the mainnet has more powerful servers. It's going to run. It can run the exact same kind of process as what the testnet's doing. So therefore, you know, benchmarks for mainnet will be the same.
Well, I think that, yeah, that's so. One correction: I think there's going to be a lot of things we do on StageNet, and then a subset of those we will do on testnet. We're not going to do everything on testnet that we did on StageNet. And then once we've done it on StageNet in a much smaller size, so we don't really create ourselves a big problem on our testnet. Once we've done it on testnet, then yeah, I mean, I would like to, well, we need to get this out for, you know, various strategic reasons. We need to get our benchmarks out. We've had a nice article written up for a while without the numbers being finalized. So we need to get those numbers finalized and then publish the article. So to do it on mainnet might not be something we want to wait for. So like the way you described it, just trying to use the evidence that's on the testnet, you know, providing links to the Telos Scan Explorer and the regular Explorer for native numbers on testnet, so people can see that, you know, basically, like I said, we did huge numbers on StageNet with everything cranked to 10. We did comparable numbers on testnet and StageNet with things set to a mainnet setting, and you can only assume that our mainnet can do it as well. In fact, we can highlight that we had to coordinate better hardware on testnet to even accomplish this, whereby on mainnet, that's the standard hardware. So I think kind of it should be a believable thing. I don't know if we will have the time to coordinate a full mainnet execution before we move forward with the article that we want to get out. So
I'd suggest that you're right. We don't need to do this on mainnet before we start getting the word out. I mean, testnet is a live testnet is fine. I don't think we should insinuate that it's going to be better on testnet on mainnet than testnet when we're here in a publicly recorded call, but or otherwise saying that we're actually trying to, get our most performant computers, right? Let's just be honest about that. We got, and just
That's
say
fair.
we think
we're to run
they're
like a
equivalent.
workshop on that. Yeah,
They should be equivalent.
yeah, we should be able to do all of this on mainnet should we need to, right? But
That's
we right now, I mean,
reasonable.
it's
I think
actually
that's
a
reasonable.
testament to our conservativeness. Like we run on testnet at 40% capacity, block capacity, right? We're mainnet both, right? Right now they're both set to 200 out of 500 milliseconds. So everything is just artificially, reduced, and it's so that potatoes can keep up, right? That's really why. So we don't.
This is where we presented as this is where we could go right now if suddenly this level of need occurred, or more like if over a few months this occurred, we can rapidly scale up to this non-theoretical, practical, real max. But since it's not there, we aren't going to. We're not going to scale up until the demand is there, but this is where we could do it. And maybe some commitment to do this every 6 months or year or something would be good.
Yeah, I mean, 3.x or whatever, the leap was a noticeable improvement in performance from like execution. And in 4.0 was actually another noticeable improvement to more on the network and peer-to-peer side. But yeah, I think each release maybe we want to do something like this just to talk about it.
The more we do, since it's a huge strength we have, the more consistently we do it, the more ingrained it becomes and the more real it becomes, and people can track it over time. And so I would support that for sure. But let's start with 4.0. I think it's great. I'm very excited. I've been wanting these numbers out for a long time.
So we should upgrade all our testnet servers to having some kick-ass hardware so we can do these kinds of tests on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, we could. There's all sorts of ways we could go about it, but at least for this one, we're going to want to really flex on testnet.
There's not a lot of reason to have to overpower testnet on a day-to-day basis, right? That would be a poor use. I'd rather see people use their resources, some other way. That doesn't help us much. Only in these situations.
It's kind of difficult to scale up and down bare metal, though. It's sort of, I'm just wondering if it's worth just paying the extra money, just having another bare metal server there, and then just whacking testnet on that. And then there's resources there if it needs to happen.
I think you can probably run testnet on a VM or a shared or a bare metal that's also doing API service or something like that. It's not our current testnet usage is not challenging for anything. Right? It's just not used that much. Unless I'm wrong, JT, Jesse, you guys have a different take on that?
No, I had to move my testnet VP to do this. I mean, I had it running on not fast hardware, and it's never had a problem. So yeah, we will coordinate. Nathaniel will definitely let me know, or we can touch base offline about how you can help us get that steroid BB going, and then we'll let everybody know on the tech channel before we do any major blasts. Once we're ready to actually run the one that gets the number, we'll probably be pretty ready with everything by the time we do that, because right now there's some blocks on testnet that if people found them would be like, oh wow, that's a lot of transactions per second. So that would be probably close to the time we publish the article. Like by the time we're telling everybody privately in the tech channel this is going to happen, it's going to be shortly after that, we'll have every duck in a row before we get it published. So yeah, I think that was all. We definitely wanted to communicate that that's happening. So I think we've done that. Tick that box.
That's awesome. I'm psyched. Thanks, guys. That's really cool. Glad we're going to be there.
Yeah, I want these numbers out. I think as much as everybody.
Awesome. Anyone got anything they want to add? Oh, let's go, Kylan.
I'm not adding on to the transaction per second conversation. So is that all right? I'm just going to keep it quick. As some of you guys have seen, I posted in the mainnet BP channel. I'm kind of proposing, not an official works proposal, but I'm kind of putting together a commenting system for Telos. It is kind of like a request for comments. Interested, just take a glance. It's only like a few pages long. Got a diagram that kind of gives you an idea of how I want it to work, and I'm looking for feedback. So that's it.
Awesome. Do you want to drop a link for that proposal in the chat here?
That's in the mainnet BP channel. Kylan, that's in the mainnet BP channel. Kylan, is that in the mainnet BP channel? Okay.
There's lag or
I'll
what?
take a look.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay, great.
And then also
I will take a look.
Chat. So awesome.
One other question. I'd just be curious if anyone's planning to go to consensus. I know it's not like last year, but Good Block's still sending some people, probably not me. And it'd be great to, see if, have some kind of plan for a simple meetup or whatever, if we know who's there. Any BPs going?
I think we're still figuring it out if anybody from the TCD is going. It sounds like we're going to try to, but it's different dates this year, conflicts with anniversaries and things.
Yeah, totally. Well, I just wanted to get it out there. It's like 3-4 weeks away, so it'd be a good time for us to start seeing who's going. And Erica and CJ and Sean from Good Block will be there. So lots of great people to connect with. Reach out if you want to, plan coffee.
Yeah, and Liam will be there from our team, so be a fun crew. Yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to add? If the consensus things end up being a little bigger, let me know. I can make some reservations. Got a huge list of great restaurants in Austin from last year, so yeah. If anyone doesn't have anything to add, we can call it a little early. I'll take that silence as a yes.
Thanks, everybody. Great seeing y'all.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
For coming out and
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
bye.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.